Thank you, Hamish, and good morning to everybody. In fact, a very, very warm welcome to everybody who's joined us again for, believe it or not, this is actually week 7 of Survive to Thrive. It's, as you know by now, it's the webinar series by New Zealand's exporters for New Zealand's exporters as we try to navigate our way through this particular situation and pick a path towards greater prosperity for ourselves and our businesses, for our communities, and of course for our country as well. Hamish and I, it's an absolute pleasure to be back leading you through this session. And today we've got another 5 amazing panelists who are going to help us to unpack a situation that's probably very, very top of mind for you right now. If anyone was with us last week, we were knee deep over there in the UK and Europe, looking at the situation on the other side of the world. But for today, we've come back much, much closer to home to look in exquisite detail at what's going on over the ditch in Australia. And without further ado, I'm just going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves before we work out what we're going to do today, and to give you an idea of the different perspectives which you're going to hear from as we go through. So first of all, good morning to Jocelyn, all the way from Melbourne, I believe.
Yes, hi Andy, I'm based here in Melbourne. I'm NZTE's Global Practice Lead for Digital Commerce, and I've been in this role since March last year, working on how we support New Zealand exporters with their digital initiatives around the world. So been a lot of work going on there.
But it's been exceptionally busy.
Yes.
I look forward to hearing from you soon. Welcome, Jocelyn. Fiona, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Fiona Cooper, and I'm the New Zealand Country Director for the Australia-New Zealand Leadership Forum. We're a body that our goal is to bring senior business and government together to help Australia and New Zealand prosper, and we all need to get back to prosperity, and that's our focus.
Yeah, fantastic. Welcome, Fiona. It's lovely to have you here. Victoria, good morning.
Oh, hi, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great day and still probably in lockdown. By way of background, I've got a company called Simply Clean. We supply into supermarkets worldwide and have basically supplied into Aldi, Woolworths and Coles in Australia. And we're in the cleaning category. So for us, this period's been crazy, but probably the other end of the spectrum.
That's fantastic. Looking forward to some reasons to be cheerful from you there, Victoria. Thank you. Welcome. Rebecca from Sydney. Good morning. You're on mute at the moment. There we go.
No.
There you are.
Okay, cool. So I'm originally from New Zealand, been in Australia or Sydney now for 20 years almost. And I started a tech business, which is now called HeyU, which is the largest mobile payment platform for cafes and restaurants over here. And then 2 years ago, I was being asked to consult a lot into other businesses. And so built a platform called Zambezi.com, where we've become a training business, where we enable people who work at other high growth tech businesses like Canva or Facebook or Safety Culture to go into other businesses, either startups or large corporates, to train.
Fantastic. Well, it's lovely to have you here, Rebecca. Thank you. Well, thanks for joining us on the panel today. And as I eat my words, last but not least here is Adrian. Kia ora, Adrian. How are you?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Andy. So, as you can hear, I'm from the UK, originally been in Australia about 20 years. My background's all FMCG, working for, the likes of Nestle, PepsiCo, more recently in retail for IGA supermarkets, heading up their marketing. And I'm currently working with the GI Foundation, which is a licensing body that endorses low GI food products for FMCG. And as part of that, I'm heading a startup to launch our own range of low GI foods into mainstream retail. So I've been doing that for about 2 years. Talked to quite a lot of suppliers and retailers. So very interesting times out there, and good to be here today.
Well, looking forward to hearing your insights soon. Just before we jump into the business of today, I just want to make an announcement that we're trying something a little bit different after the end of the session at 11 o'clock. Before 11 o'clock, as you all know, there's a Q&A button at the bottom, and as the conversation starts to trigger thoughts in your head, fire through as many questions as you want the panelists to try to answer, and we'll try and cover off those if we possibly can. So just hit the Q&A button as we go through the session. However, after 11 o'clock, if you want to stay on the call, then some of us are going to be experimenting just with a live session when we can actually talk to each other as attendees as well, as opposed to a panel webinar here. So if anybody out there in the audience wants to stay around and speak to other audience members afterwards, it's a little bit like going down the pub after a meeting, then that's what we're going to be doing. But plainly, it's on a BYO basis at the present moment. So anyway, without further ado, let's turn to you first, Jocelyn. Is Australia open for business at the present moment?
Oh, absolutely. I guess, you know, the focus for Australia is certainly on getting the economy going again. So discussions at national cabinet level are all about how we slowly move out of the COVID restrictions and get the economy safely back on track. So each initiative as it's rolled out, and there'll be more discussion of that tonight at the National Cabinet, each initiative and change will probably be given about 4 weeks to see how it works and see how it impacts the number of cases that start to pop up of coronavirus. And then they'll proceed to another stage of loosening up our way of working and living.
So as we're moving from stage to stage, I mean, plainly, geographically, Australia is huge. Should we be thinking about Australia as a single market, or should we be thinking about this in terms of individual states being on their own journey towards normality?
Absolutely different states. So you have Melbourne and Tasmania, who are much more conservative, and both have had outbreaks in the last week or so. So in Victoria, we've had the Meatworks, where there's over 60 cases now come out of that cluster. Yeah. And Tasmania has had its own cluster a couple of weeks ago that it's working through. In Queensland, things have eased up a lot more. Western Australia has done really well with keeping the number of cases down, but has closed its borders very firmly. So it's very much a case of each state, one at a time, which one is the biggest opportunity for your particular category for now. So, and all of these things will change, and it will be a matter of monitoring the number of cases that pop up as things free up. So we've already seen New South Wales and Queensland open beaches and then have to close them again because of people not observing social distancing.
Yeah. Adrian, from your point of view, in terms of working deeply across supermarkets, is there a difference in the way the supermarkets are behaving from state to state as they alter to the impact of COVID in their region?
I think that would probably be more from an operational perspective and the individual teams within those states. So most of the work that I've been doing is at a buyer level. From their perspective, I've not really seen a lot of those individual state differences. They're more focused upon doing, you know, the big buys that make sure that the stock gets into the individual DCs, and that would be managed more on a state basis. So it's kind of difficult for me to contribute from a state-by-state basis, Andy.
Yeah. So from a perspective about thinking about channels and thinking about market, it's still about assuming that all states will come back to normality, just in different timeframes. So maintain that relationship with that buyer in the short term as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I think we've been through the phase of trying to keep products on shelves. There's the odd gap, but we're pretty much through that. A lot of the focus is now going on to, well, how are we going to be running our reviews to get new products on shelf in 2, 3, 4 months' time? And from a retailer perspective, I sense that they're also starting to look at how they can get competitive advantage out of the back end of the crisis. You know, the immediate short-term supply we've got through, but you know, where is the strategy going to go going forward, and what's the post-COVID consumer going to look like? So I've really sensed that over the last couple of weeks in my discussions with buyers.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll touch on that post-COVID consumer in a little bit. Just back to the big picture for a second with you, Fiona, because plainly with the Leadership Forum, you're working very hard to try to find ways to practically get through all of this. it's like, in terms of your understanding about the possibility of a shared bubble that's being talked about in the press at the present moment, how do you perceive this opportunity in front of us? Is it actually any different to normal trading terms? And does it warrant any closer investigation by the export community?
Yes, it's very exciting. I mean, there's so much doom and gloom about the pandemic, but we're all now, as we started to come through the lockdown, we're all thinking about the future and how to get back to normal, because it's certainly not business as usual right now. So the ANZLF has a tourism sector group, and traditionally it will talk about things like supply and demand and tourism content and what can we do together to promote Australia and New Zealand to tourists offshore. That's all ground to a halt, and the group has had to pivot, as they say, and reinvent itself. And so you may have seen in the media this week, we've announced the formation of the Trans-Tasman Safe Border Working Group, because now it's all about just getting people flying again across the ditch. And we've been thinking about this for about a month, and we've been in close touch with both governments, and of course the governments themselves have been talking to each other. And we were delighted that the two Prime Ministers issued a joint statement on Tuesday, announcing their commitment to opening up a safe border when the time is right. And so our group is swinging in behind that. It will bring together government officials involved in the border and key participants in the airline sector, the airports and the airlines in particular, and get them in a room and work out what needs to happen at the operational and policy level to enable safe travel to happen again.
Right. So from a practical point of view, this is about getting those air links, those critical air links, back up and running as fast as possible. And what will it mean in terms of process changes for exporters who are using that connection to Australia?
Well, that remains to be seen, because the group really kicks off next week. But as I understand it, what they're looking at doing is taking the existing border procedures and overlaying that with health requirements to ensure that travel can safely occur. So exactly what those requirements will be remains to be seen. We have to have those discussions with the officials.
Right.
But that's the plan, and the aim is to put together a package of recommendations to both governments by sometime in June. So we're looking to move pretty quickly, but then it's up to the governments to decide actually when will it be the right time to open up that border.
And the right time is exactly what everybody wants to wants to know, but it's the worst thing to predict. From a personal point of view, inside NZTE, Jocelyn, it's like, are you optimistic that we'll have that border open within 3 months or longer? It's like, what's your feeling in what you see right now, here and now, this week?
Yeah, I think this week I'm optimistic. There's certainly from NZTE side of things as well. We're very supportive of opening up the border and flights between Australia and New Zealand. So we are, as we know, very close trading partners anyway, and our ability to control the virus has been very similar and similarly successful. So it makes a lot of sense that we open up the Trans-Tasman channel, and that we allow those opportunities between the two countries to get going. Yeah. I think, as Fiona has said, it's a lot about making sure that our restrictions and requirements in a health sense are lined up. So in Australia, we've rolled out the app. We're slowly getting up to the 40% download marker that will make it more effective. So the next conversations, I think Fiona's accurately said, remain to be seen, but there's certainly a lot of goodwill on both sides. And personally, I'm optimistic, and I'm sure that if we can get that happening, we will get it happening.
Yeah, it's like, I think there is a lot to be optimistic about at the present moment. The situation is very, very unusual. We have a closed border, but the market is actually operating inside the country. Now, just turning to you, Victoria, because you've got live experience into all the supermarket chains in Australia right now.
Yeah.
What can you tell about the market sentiment at the present moment in the categories which you're in, through your work across Aldi's and Woolworths and Coles and
Coles? Yeah. So well, we're in cleaning, so we're, our product offering is in what are we in, you know, like the cloth wipes and bamboo wipes and microfiber products, and then we supply everything from dustpan and brooms to brushes. And so our category has we've probably had the other end of the craziness, in that trying to get product on shelf in time, and making sure that we've got that pipeline feeding through, and everything is just happening super fast. So we're on the phone with our buyers all the time. They're hunting product, so it's almost like they're coming to their existing suppliers and saying, okay, this is the hole we're in, what can you do to help, how quickly can you turn it around, where are you up to? So it really has been a great opportunity to collaborate. I feel like that word gets used a lot, but we really do partner with the buyers, and the buyers are, you know, putting their hands up and asking for help, and those that can help quickly and get it there immediately. It's brilliant, and that relationship of trust, which often you don't have with a big corporate. And we work across, you know, all three different, you know, competitors basically. So it's a case of making sure that you're keeping your mouth shut in some instances, but then also making sure that everybody's getting what they need without price gouging. So for us, there's been a big kind of question mark, and by consumers, I guess, seeing supermarkets and thinking that everybody's out there price gouging, which isn't the case at all. Most of the supermarkets are actually taking quite big hits in terms of, I know their profitability has just come out, but they've actually taken hits in terms of increasing security, increasing cleaning, you know, all of those sort of overheads that weren't there are now there. Having to air freight product in has been crazy. Trying to get stock released in China is very difficult. And then from our point of view as a supplier, we're getting the production, you know, China's up and running, but then trying to get it on a plane or a ship, or, you know, which is now detouring and taking longer. And so those promises that you're making in terms of deadlines are changing. But this is one of those environments, I think, where our customers anyway are aware that you're doing your best, and that the environment is changing and dynamic. And 1 minute the price will be this, and honestly within 2 hours our pricing can be, you know, radically different.
So this sense of tolerance and understanding and collaboration has been a recurring theme over the present weeks. Rebecca, you're absolutely the center of the service industry and business to business. Is that same way of doing business, of being more tolerant and more flexible, and actually more open-minded to what you present the markets? Does that ring true to you too?
Yeah, sure. Certainly it does, in terms of, you know, we have had to do that because we've predominantly been a, you know, live event, face-to-face and face-to-face corporate training business. So we've had to completely, like, I guess, throw up everything that we had planned this year. We had 4 major events planned, and then you know, completely rethink and go online. And it's been really hard to do that, I think. I mean, I've personally, we're a small business. I drive it myself. I've got 2 young children at home. So yeah, I think it has, it was stressful, I think, for the first few weeks, but then you start to realize, well, everyone's in the same boat, and, you know, there are things that you can do. And then, yeah, we've rethought our business. We've moved a lot of stuff online. And I think, like, in the long term, we'll end up much stronger for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is like this radical need to change. I mean, Jocelyn, you must be aware of more than anybody else here, as everyone jumps online. And yet, as we've heard from multiple panelists over the last few weeks, jumping online is not the end of the story when it comes to services. It's like, what's happening in terms of last mile delivery and some of those logistical pressure points that are naturally there when you have such a massive market change? What's the latest?
I noticed one of the Q&A is also about Australia Post, and I do think that services are getting back on track. There certainly has been delays. I mean, Vino Mofo is a great example of a company that was already online, and just due to the immediate switch from in-store buying to online buying, their deliveries, which were usually, you know, within 24, 48 hours, started to stretch out to a week.
Yeah.
So it's you're quite right. It's just moving online is not the end of it. There's all of those logistics around. Well, do we have drivers? Do we have trucks? Do we have you know, a safe way of delivering these products to people's front doors? And so, you know, I personally understand the frustration, particularly from a supplier point of view. And it certainly must be devastating if you're transporting anything fresh or perishable. But we've unfortunately been in this space where our countries both have been a little bit slower to adopt digitisation and digital commerce than other economies around the world. So the reason my role exists is because New Zealand's major trading partners, China, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, were all way ahead of us in terms of their digitisation and their adoption of buying and selling and delivering of goods and services. So so it will take some time to work through. I think right at the moment, the positive is that generally end consumers are quite tolerant. You know, before this, people were quite intolerant of delays to their deliveries, but we are being much more tolerant, and there's an understanding that, I think, as Rebecca said, you know, we are in this together and everybody's doing their best to try to figure it out. And it's, you know, the positives I take energy from are when I see companies like Qantas, you know, allowing their staff to go and work at Woolworths to help while things are under pressure. So, you know, we've seen extraordinarily positive behaviour from some of these businesses in the last few months.
Yeah, very positive and very collaborative. Rebecca, you kind of downplayed the transition that you had to make from physical to digital at the start of this crisis, and I think it's worth coming back just to unpack that a little bit more, because this was what you took your business through was a complete transformation of the way that you deliver your products. Have you got any advice for anybody who's facing the same need for such a radical shift from effectively from all face-to-face to all remote in such a short piece of time?
I think that probably the piece of advice I'd give is, we're still in the process, right? So I feel like we don't have everything perfect yet. It's still, you know, very much a work in progress, and I don't know where it's going to end up. I think at the beginning of the process, I felt like I was constantly frustrated because you know, things wouldn't work the way that I hoped that they would work. We weren't able to do a lot of the same things that we were able to do face to face. It's very hard to build the same kind of, you know, rapport online. So I think the big advice is just keep doing it, and, you know, make iterative improvements, and, you know, don't go easy on yourself, and don't have, you know, massively high expectations of how things might work at the beginning, and that, yeah, people are quite forgiving at this point in time, and really about putting one foot in front of the other, and you know, like what you guys are doing, you know, with this program and series of events, it's you know, everybody is just putting these things together, you know, as they go. My husband is a kind of senior at one of the universities here, and he is running large meetings and lectures from our bedroom, and it's just with children running around downstairs. So it's just I think just forgiving, just keeping on pushing through, I guess, is the advice, and don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And, you know, the more that you try, the better that you'll get, and the more that you'll start to learn you know, how this is going to look long term, and the opportunities that do exist.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like this the pushing through to a long term place. I know is something which you've been thinking a lot about, Adrian, about what the end change actually will be in terms of consumer behaviour, especially inside the F&B space. Can you tell us a little bit about the process that you've been on at the present moment to try to work out what's going to be materially different with consumer behaviour once we reach to some form of the other side of this, whatever that might be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would echo Rebecca's point, is that we're all kind of learning as we go. We're absorbing an awful lot of information from reports. I think it's talking to people who are going to be on your path to market. So constantly trying to maintain a dialogue, not just with buyers, but beasts like Coles and Woolworths have many different stakeholders in there. So we try and develop relationships within marketing, within the health and sustainability team, and within the buying teams to get all of their perspectives on where the consumer will be. What we then do is we generate a list of hypotheses, which can lead to different product offerings, service offerings, and then we will go and test those out with our communities. We've not done that yet, but we have 30,000 people on our database who are interested in low GI living, so we'll be testing out some of those ideas with those guys. And a mix of developing new programs for the post-COVID world, and just suck it and see, put something out there, because things are moving so quickly that if we can find a way to get something out there quickly, trial it. We're talking about smaller level trials across 15 to 20 stores, and we'll use that insight to really work out whether we understand the post-COVID consumer. Yeah. So, desk research, listen to all of your stakeholders, get some ideas, and then just try a few out would be the process.
So it is still about validation. There is no answer about what the market would look like quite yet.
No, I don't think there is at the moment. I mean, there's a general view that, people are going to be more focused upon price. Obviously, health is going to come more to the fore, but that's quite broad. I actually think the business that we're in, which is around reassurance, trust, authenticity, is going to play a greater role when it comes to a wealth of healthier products that will go out there in the market. People they're more used to having to consider themselves and their families, and I think that individual sense of protection will start to come through in some of the brand choices that they make, and they'll look for that extra level of trust and reassurance.
Right, thank you. I mean, a lot of this kind of echoes the same approach you'd have inside a startup community. And I know, Rebecca, you're very close to the startup communities over in Australia. Are there any useful parallels we should bring into our own businesses that we can learn from startup behavior when it comes to try to validate and understand and make small, quick changes to work out actually what is going to resonate in the new market?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess for sure. I mean, everybody can learn from the kind of lean startup and agile methodology. So just really what I said before, don't be afraid to make mistakes. There was that, famous quote from Reid, the founder of LinkedIn, saying, if you're not embarrassed by your first product, then you've launched it too late. So just not being afraid to make mistakes, testing, talking to customers as much as possible. It's difficult not being face to face. I get so much out of watching customers engage with our products. In real life, it's hard to kind of replicate that online, but you can replicate. I mean, you will, if you try, learn new ways to replicate that process, and probably it will end up being more efficient in the long run because you'll be able to speak to more people in different places. Yeah. So I think just testing lots of new things. And then the other thing that I think, learning from the startup community is generally very collaborative. It's thriving. I know both New Zealand and Australia have extremely collaborative ecosystems, like lots of events, lots of mentorships and training. And I think that whole, at least here in Australia, I've seen that it's started to shift online just in the last few weeks. Lots of new events coming through, the VC funds, company founders offering themselves to mentor and provide advice to other founders at this time. So I think that hopefully that reaches across more broadly in business.
So when we have this need to be incredibly agile, then plainly the first port of call for that agility is digital and online commerce channels in whatever way. Jocelyn, is it a good idea to start to use those channels to enter the market and to experiment in the market at the same time? Or should you be entering with a much more fixed mindset?
No, sorry, I feel that now is the time to have as open a mindset as you possibly can to opportunities and different ways of doing things. This is our opportunity to try new things in an environment where people are more tolerant, are open to change, and they might not be comfortable with it, but they're willing to give things a try. Digital commerce, definitely a great way of testing any market and iterating very quickly, as Rebecca says. I think, it's always been a great way to have getting your message out there, getting your values out there, getting your product out there, and seeing what works. So, and then trying again and improving each message or each product as you go. I'd also probably want to add that, one of the big trends that has been occurring already, but has also kicked up enormously in the last couple of months, is the application of digital commerce to B2B business. It's the gross value of B2B digital commerce is between 4 to 6 times that of consumer goods. I understand that consumer goods are the real focus at the moment because that's where we are operating. But for those businesses who might be listening that are in the B2B space, like Rebecca's, providing advice and services, then they really need to adopt digital commerce ways of working as well. As consumers, we now expect our business suppliers and partners to provide us the same experiences online as we get in our consumer life. So it's very important at the moment, I think, to remain open, to keep trying, and to leverage whatever you can to make new relationships right now, so that you can come out of this in the best possible condition.
So has this shift, to you, Victoria, is this shift towards heavier digital consumption from consumers opened up some new opportunities for you, either in the way that you operate with your customers or in the way that you drive products into market?
Well, Hamish will laugh at me. I've basically run my entire business on my cell phone. I've got this team. So new for me was having to buy a computer like the day before lockdown. So I've always, and like you, Rebecca, we do have a small team. There's only 4 of us. So we're in probably 12,000 supermarkets worldwide. So we're a very small team, but we have to think very fast. In terms of digitally, I'm really bad at it. I've got a marketing degree, but I'm absolutely rubbish at it. But yeah, I think the critical bit too is, I know the government's helping with planning and cash flow strategy, and and I think it can all get a little bit too much. Sometimes I think you've just got to act. You just got to pick up the phone. You've just got to find the solution. You've got to be kind to them. You've got to find out what their needs are. Don't just sell what you've got. I think you've got to really listen, find out what they need, and then plug that hole, and that will get you indoors that normally you probably wouldn't. And people being at home, with everybody working from home, sure, it may only be another week or 2, but I know we're having to send advertising samples and directly to people's homes and buyers' homes, and then the advertising department, so you're sort of shipping all these bits and pieces all over the place. Bruce, I'm just reading your Q&A question. Do you want me to answer that now, Andrew, or?
We'll come back to that just in one second.
Okay.
I'm just going to spin up to Hamish, because this is like what you're talking about here about sending samples to people's homes and like multiple channels and everything. It feels, if I'm considering market entry, it feels incredibly hard. Hamish, you're at the sharp end of market entry through digital channels, not just Amazon, but the whole remit. Should I be seeing this as something really difficult or exciting? What's your advice on using e-commerce and digital channels as a first step into the Australian market?
Well, yeah, Jocelyn touched on that point in terms of testing new markets, and so you've got the options. You've got your own website and your own storefront and driving traffic through Facebook, Instagram, Google, whatever means there. So that there's people definitely doing that and making sales and shipping product out of New Zealand, and the timeframes aren't too bad with that. But there's also the whole marketplace as well. And in Australia, you've obviously got eBay is the biggest play there. You've got Catch and Amazon, which is obviously space that we work in. And I was talking with Amazon just 2 days ago, and they certainly saw a huge surge, which has backed off, but it's settled down at a new step change. So it's certainly a lot higher. But what we're seeing in Australia and in the US as well is people that it's not just about just a website or just Amazon or just a marketplace. It's the whole omni-channel approach. And so it's how you weave that together, because the way consumers are buying is they bounce around. Like they'll see your website, they'll go to Amazon, for example, to check what the price is there or what the reviews are there, and they might go back to your website and then buy from there, or vice versa, and looking for different shipping options. So just having that digital presence in multiple places means you're getting eyeballs on your products, and you're meeting consumers where they are and where they want to buy. So, and that's a great entry point. So you start to understand, is the market, are they liking my product in terms of the reviews? Are they prepared to pay that price? And that actually gives you ammunition to then go and talk to a Woolies or an Aldi, if that makes sense, to say, hey, well, look, this is what the market is saying. And then you're evening up the power balance, you could say, when it comes to having those negotiations. So it is and it'll be good to hear from Victoria as well. Maybe we shouldn't be scared of the bigger guys, the bigger change as well. It'll be interesting to hear what you think about that, Victoria. But as a starting point, and I had a conversation with a guy just 2 days ago with a beverage drink, and for him, he couldn't see that channel working because it's more of a premium product. But for him, he can build his Australian market, it's through online means, and nurture that, and and that alone will be great for him once he gets going. So I think yes is the answer. It is, it's worth exploring in the scheme of things. You've obviously got to meet the compliance and regulatory means for that market, whether it's TGA in particular. Food is good, we've got the same standards, but yeah, you're still exporting, but it's a great way to go.
So, Victoria, your thoughts on that? Is there anything to be scared of when stepping up into the somewhat infamous channels of the big supermarkets in Australia?
Oh, I think, and Adrian, you'd know this better than other one, having worked in FMCG, and so you're probably a better expert. We went in and had a product and sold it in. Getting your pricing right, absolutely critical in the beginning, and the way they operate with their trading terms and all that sort of thing in the first instance can be quite cumbersome. Your obligations in terms of advertising and promotion, and once again, that depends on the category that you're in and when you're in it and how fast, whether you've got an everyday price or whether you've got to be on sale every kind of 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, so an example for us, we're supplying a private label product, but we're actually warehousing it. And we went on sale with this product right when everyone was panic buying. So we had this massive bill that just went out of control because we'd already predetermined a promotion in that week that sales just went crazy in house, in that one kind of category. So yes, we got more hands, and it was a really good opportunity from a positive point of view, but from a cash flow point of view, we sold a whole lot, but we had to pay a whole lot as well. So working with the big guys does you've got to be smart, and you've got to have somebody holding your hand going into it if you can, or somebody that's done it before, because Adrian, pricing is critical, because very, very easily, you're on low margins, very quickly it can be taken away with, the way it operates.
So just to touch on that, Adrian, really quickly, is the complexities that Victoria's just talked about there, does this make them too hard for a first entry into the Australian market, or should it be on your list?
I think you have to look at the trade. You get scale, which gives you the brand awareness. You often then need to have a plan to get profit, because sometimes these are not highly profitable channels. So it might be that you're using the awareness of your brand, the fact that people are picking up using it to then take it into other channels, be they on or offline, and that's where you make your money. Another way is to go online first, which I've seen, which is building a presence, having a stronger selling story and more to negotiate when you go into a retailer. But it's really your individual circumstances, how much cash you've got, how long you're prepared to take to build your business. building upon Victoria's point, the advice I would have is really try and get clarity on everything that isn't included. Buyers, listen, they're professionals, and they're just doing a job, and their job is to do what they need to for a retailer. So just clarify, what is your basic margin, what is your terms, what's the other marketing that I'm going to be expected to contribute, will you be putting my products on shelf, what's the shelf position I can expect. They won't tell you all of those answers because it's a negotiation, but at least you've thought of every single thing that could come back as an extra later, which could scupper your P&L. Then it goes into the realms of a negotiation, which is, it's a grey area. There are no rules, So I would reach out to other people that have done it, which is what I do, to get different perspectives. Sometimes on individual buyers, but more about what's the prevailing mood within a retailer. What are they being asked to do? What are they being judged upon? It's always margin, but maybe it's about another area of income in marketing. Maybe it's about alignment to a particular strategy that's been passed down to them. Yeah. So if you can understand that bigger ecosystem more, it just gives you that little bit more information when you're going into a negotiation.
Certainly, it's like the reminder to reach out is critical, because we often are, when we're faced with crisis, we think we've got to carry it ourselves. Fiona, it's like from the leadership forum here, you're all about people not competing but doing it together. And what we're facing with the bubble, or whatever we end up calling it, I'm sure it'll be called a bubble, but it's a special relationship which is more than just opening up an export market. It's actually opening up a completely unique relationship between two nations in the world. How should we be approaching this to follow your thinking, that it's actually better to collaborate and work together to enter a market rather than to try to go it alone?
Yeah. Well, our exporters in both countries are often competing in third markets, and that's as it should be. But they face the same challenges, whether it's a tariff barrier or a non-tariff barrier. And why not collaborate on addressing the same problems that we face? And then you've got an even playing field and keep going out and killing each other in the market. So, there is so much that both sides can benefit from collaborating on common problems. And so that's where the Safe Border Working Group comes in. We've got a health technology sector group, and they've been working on the idea of a digital health passport for the last 3 years. Yeah. And, the governments are interested, but, it wasn't the highest priority, or there was digital privacy issues to be addressed. And then suddenly in the last month, everyone's like, oh my God, we need a digital health passport. So for that group, it's like all their Christmases have come at once, and a whole lot of barriers that they were coming up against are suddenly being swept away by the tide of the changing times. And we have an Indigenous business group, and we've been wanting to bring Māori business together with Indigenous business in Australia. Travel can be expensive, so suddenly everyone's focusing on, well, can we do an online joint trade show to bring those products to each other and to the world? So many people are just looking at everything with fresh eyes and figuring out new ways to get the job done.
Yeah, and this is and these fresh ways are very much about two-way trade. Rebecca, you look at this potential relationship as being a two-way thing, don't you, from a services point of view? That it's not just about establishing one-way trade, but it's actually about two-way opportunity.
Yeah, so the area we're focused in is learning and training. So, I've long thought about, we have these great entrepreneurs and leaders at companies in Australia like Canberra and Safety Culture that are training. Could we get them into New Zealand? And then vice versa. It's been some amazing success stories in New Zealand. I would love to get some of those people from those companies to come out to Australia, but it's just, we're a small team and we haven't managed to get there yet. But now it makes so much more sense there essentially is no border for learning now. So we should be, the two ecosystems or startup ecosystems should be collaborating more and sharing, and then together, we'll have, access to better expertise. So I have shared, hopefully we can share them with the group. There are some free weekly startup events that are running in Australia, which are open to New Zealand business founders as well. So it'd be great if we could share some of those links. But one is Innovation Bay, which is about investment in Australia, tapping into venture capital, what's happening in the venture capital scene. They run an event every week. Airtree, one of the big funds here, runs a founders workshop every week, which is free and open for any business founder to join. Blackbird, the other VC fund, is also running events regularly, and then Zambezi, us, and Startup Daily, we run events together every week. So you subscribe to any of those newsletters. So, and it would be great. Yeah, I will look into now what the New Zealand startup events are, and hopefully we can start joining some of those events as well, and then learn from each other.
Yeah, it's like it's partnership. It's like New Zealand and Australia are going to partner together as countries even closer than they were before. And I guess what you're saying here is that it's that same mindset that we have to have right from the start. It's like we're not selling to each other. We're listening to what you need and then building together from there. Hamish, I've just got one eye on the clock here, sir, and time is moving on. Do we have some questions that have come through?
Yes, we do. We've got a lot of good questions that have come through. So let's go quick fire through these here. We've got kind of 1 minute, as it were. So we've got a specific question here for Adrian, actually, from Devon. Any advice on new products getting in front of buyers when you don't already have a relationship to get a meeting? So I guess this is like, where to start. You might have covered off on that.
Look, it's hard. See if you can get a link in via someone who knows them. The two ways that I pitch products are: one, what's the size of the opportunity for them? Make it look as big as possible, big incremental number. The second one is have a look at what the corporate strategy is and try and position your product as being bang in line with their corporate strategy. That's two things which I find sometimes get them listening early.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks, Adrian. So one here for Victoria. Are you seeing changes in payment terms from your suppliers? In China, are you wanting 100% up front versus 20% deposits? If you are seeing this, how are you liaising with your customers to meet the potential cash flow implications? So I guess this is really like a payment terms problem from both ends of the spectrum. Has there been negotiating there?
Okay, so historically we were 30% deposit and 70% when the goods are ready to ship. Prior to COVID, we have obviously been increasing our turnover with a lot of our factories. So we've started transitioning into aligning our payment terms with our customers, with our suppliers. So because we have long-standing relationships with them, we were then moving towards sort of 30% deposit and then 70% once we got paid. So we'd already sort of transitioned through that phase. So now we're in a position where they've got trust and confidence in us. So our payment terms have actually been okay. We still do have a major cash flow demand on us. And I was up at 3 o'clock this morning actually watching the Australian US dollar, and it suddenly peaked and climbed. So we were flat out trying to buy currency at about 3 o'clock this morning, but which is also a major exposure, right? Like the currency variation is huge, and then with the currency variation from Australia Kiwi, you used to be able to get a bit of a gain there where you might have lost it US Aussie, you'd gain it with the cross between New Zealand and Australia, but we're close to parity on that now. Hopefully I've answered your question. I think it's really important to communicate with your suppliers and make sure that right now payment terms might be tricky, but you need to be working towards establishing that rapport with them and then transitioning them into your payment terms so that you do aid your cash flow.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's great. So thanks, Victoria, for that. Now, there was one around, I'm just looking at the time. I'm going to kind of move through and then I'll loop back just to see where we're at. So we've got a question here from Marlene about the hospitality sector at the moment, because a number of companies selling to the hospitality, call it with beverages, whether it's restaurants, cafes, or even like events businesses. And this might be Jocelyn, you might have an idea of this here. What's happening there, or what could people expect in terms of open business?
As a general comment, no, cafes and restaurants are not open. They are able to provide takeaways. So if you had a product that was relevant to takeaway, then that might work. But in terms of reopening restaurants and cafes, I can't recall hearing any projected date for that at this point in time. So, so yeah, difficult one to say. Hotels aren't reopening. There's very little happening in the food service area, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. That's thank you. And then actually, just while you're still unmuted there is a question, just I guess to elaborate a little bit further on defining digital B2B commerce. The question there as well. So just to give a quick.
For sure. So digital commerce for B2B is again going back to finding out about your customer's journey to find you and how they interact with you through digital means. So a quick example that I think might help is for myself, I was looking for a professional research provider to do some data collection for me with regards to different regions around the world. So what we do as buyers for our workplaces, we still go to our colleagues or acquaintances and ask for referrals. So I got a handful of companies that were referred to me. And then what I do is I go online, I look at those companies' websites, I look at the work that they've done. I submitted a contact request through their website and asked for someone to contact me back. I might download some information from those websites to see the quality and the depth of the insights. Then I speak to people over Zoom and have an interview with them about what they might provide to me. Then I get quotes, for instance, sent to me in different formats and different channels. One of them might be by email, so different ways of providing quotes for your business. And then I obviously have to go through my internal process. We all know that the B2B buying process is quite complex and there's decision makers within the business. So I then share that information, do my business case, but then I go back and I make that purchase. And generally I might make that purchase by having a telephone conversation with my account manager at the chosen provider, or by email, that sort of thing. So you can see that a lot of my interaction is via digital means. I might not, and my end payment, the transaction, goes through via my normal account payable system. So it's not going to be captured via a website or an online transaction, but that whole choice of a provider, and I went with one based in Hamburg, meant that without digital means for that company to provide me with information that I could assess their service on, that they wouldn't have been in the mix for that. So, and that very first contract was quite small, and now we've gone on to the second one, which was 3 times the size. So, you know, you've got to think about that customer journey for finding your service in a B2B environment as well. It's not, and I'm just applying my normal behaviour that I would use to find something that I might have a personal need for. So hopefully that example just gives a practical way of thinking about how my business as a B2B product or service provider is using digital to find new customers and make those transactions happen.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks, Jocelyn, for that there as well. Appreciate it.
Time for 2 more, I think, Hamish.
Yes. Okay. So there is a question here about the pharmacy channel. Thinking chemists like Chemist Warehouse, Go Vita, Mr. Vitamins. Are these businesses operating, and on what conditions? Well, there's online sales, social distancing, 1 in, 1 out. So what are you noticing there, the Australians in the room, about the pharmacy game in Australia?
Just very quickly, pharmacies are open for business with social distancing. There's no 1 in, 1 out. There's, they're providing hand sanitizers at the door. That would be my quick summary, if anyone else would like to add to that.
We'll quickly, okay, thanks Jocelyn. We'll move on to another one here that is, and maybe Fiona, you might have a take on this. Are Australian buyers looking for the product story? So a lot of, and some of the other calls we've done where the New Zealand story can make sense in the UK, Europe, or the USA, but what are we noticing about Australia? Like, do they like that New Zealand story, or does it not matter? Is it about price?
Well, look, actually, I'd like to defer to my colleagues who are out there in the marketplace.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, I know in our category, it's not, I don't think it is about the story. I think it's kind of needs must, you know, so I don't know about, you know, perishable items, but like for us, you know, and gloves and cloth, cleaning wipes and everything, people didn't care what brand it was or what it was made of. It was kind of last man standing and what was left on the shelf, and even price didn't matter. You know, I mean, prices were going through the roof and people were paying, you know, like toilet paper, you know, like it didn't actually matter. You just needed something to get the job done. So I don't know if the brand story is critical for buyers either right now. It's a case of if you've got what they need, and I guess then the price is right and your timing, you can get in there quickly, then for us in our category, that's where it hits. And I would say it'd be similar in hospitality and for pharmacies as well. You know, they're hunting certain products. So if you can solve problems for them, I think that's more important than your actual brand story.
Yeah.
Would that be fair? Is that how you'd see it too, Adrian? Or
yeah, I think I agree with you that at the moment it's been more about price and just give me some potatoes, whatever brand. Going forward, I think it's about relevance. So it's not just story for story's sake. It's saying, well, what's the relevance of your product within my everyday life? So food products, it could be about recipes and combinations which then offer them health benefits. So it's that understanding more of their total perspective rather than just being a product that you're selling at a price. So not story for story's sake, just put your product in the context of some relevant information which will add value to them.
And in terms of those sort of products, I would think variety too. I don't know about you, but at home I am bored. I'm bored of the products we've been getting. The kids are bored with what they've been getting. So if you could find something that was like a little bit different or had a different flavour or just was, rather than the story, I think that personally would solve something for me at home. So whether that's the same for buyers, and maybe that's the avenue, you know, are you bored with what you're eating? Well, you try this, give us a whirl, you know?
The only other bill quickly is look at what retailers are already doing. So they will have platforms for recipes, hints, tips. So how can your product add to what they're currently doing and play back some of their language to them, because they're very responsive to that rather than trying to create something completely different.
That's absolutely. It's a timely reminder to remember to bring a little bit of colour and variety into people's lives, especially the market that we perceive that knows us very well. But we shouldn't lose the story nor lose the drive to create new things, which has been the theme throughout today. Now, I'm just looking at the clock, Mr. Conway. We are all out of time, but something different is going to happen after this. If anybody wants to carry on and talk between each other out there in the audience, what's the plan?
So what we're going to do now is, like, obviously this is top of the hour. Some people have already had to dash. So if you have to go, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it, and hopefully it's been useful. And again, thank you to the panelists there. It's been superb to get your insights. Really, really fantastic. And what we're going to do now, though, is if we've got another half hour here for Q&A on, and we're also going to have Christopher Boyes from Catapult, who is a exporting guru specialist, and he's going to just lead a conversation around giving some good training advice. So if you have to go, thank you for being here, but look, hang around if you can. And what we'll do is, obviously, because it's a webinar format, we'll promote people to all be panelists so we can see each other, etc. So that's what we're going to do. We might have, so however many people we've got. We're just going to try this out. Adapting.
If you want to talk
just there we go.
And to talk to the attendees, then hang on in 2 minutes' time onto the end of the call. But we are just out of time, so I just want to turn right back to the panelists and very, very quickly just look for a reason to be cheerful from everybody. And Jocelyn, wearing bright and red, looking very cheerful. What's your reason to be cheerful for exporters right now?
Well, I think the reason to be cheerful for New Zealand exporters is that there's organisations like NZTE here to help, and there's lots and lots of resources that they can tap into. So a bit of an ad for NZTE. So if companies would like some extra support and to look into some of the government opportunities that can be provided, then please contact NZTE. We're working hard to open up that combined bubble with Australia, and I think this disruption, as the catchphrase is, provides lots of opportunities. So just be brave, try, and work with others, and see what you can achieve in this time.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Fiona. Reason to be cheerful from your perspective.
The ANZAC spirit will triumph. The Australia-New Zealand relationship is so strong, and we are each other's first markets, and the rest of the world will be looking at us. We've got an opportunity to put a template in place for getting trade and travel back up running. So I'm very excited about the opportunities.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Adrian, very quickly, reason to be cheerful.
I think that we will all become a lot better at collaboration and building strategic partnerships, which are easy to say, but it requires effort, it requires a real sense of empathy, and actually a skill you need to practice. I think we will necessarily all become better at it, and in doing so, we can solve bigger problems together.
Wonderful, thank you. Rebecca, your reason to be cheerful?
I think we can use this as an opportunity to come closer together in terms of, sharing all sorts of things together, but sharing learning is an obvious one. And I just want to point out that on the chat, I have shared links to 4 different weekly events that Australia is running to support businesses, which are open and free to New Zealanders to join if they'd like to check them out as well. So it would be awesome to see some New Zealanders in some of those events.
Let's do it, make it happen. Thank you, Rebecca, that's magic. And finally, the last reason to be cheerful goes to you, Victoria.
I think there's heaps of reasons to be cheerful. I said to my children when we went into this, we can either come out fat and dumb, or we can come out fit and fabulous. So I think if your business is slow at the moment, use it as a time to get better, to streamline, to get ready, because this phase 2 will end. And if it's a tough phase for you, it will get better. If it's a great phase for you, it will get worse. So you've just got to make sure that you just keep climbing, and it's okay to make mistakes because everyone's making plenty.
Perfect, thank you. Well, I think it's time to wrap the full webinar here. So I'd just like to extend thanks on behalf of Hamish and myself to Jocelyn, to Adrian, Fiona, Rebecca, and Victoria. It's been a hugely insightful and a very, very valuable conversation today. And we all look forward to seeing this bubble expand from our house to our country, and then over the ditch to our friends over there as well. And so from Hamish and from myself and from all the teams behind us, thanks so much for joining us. Do come back again next week. I think we're talking about China next week, but watch your email or watch the feeds and you will find out very soon. Be safe, take care.